Thank you for that question. And I think after hearing everyone on the panel, I don't think there is room to deny that reproductive health is a human right. And what I think we need to shift conversations around is that reproductive rights is also the fundamental for gender equality. If you're not going to fulfill a woman's reproductive and sexual rights and needs and health services that is required, to expect her to be a participating in formalized labor forces, or being able to educate her daughters, or being able to push back against traditional archaic practices like child early age marriage is just not possible. So when we talk about women's reproductive rights, it should not be starting at the time of her pregnancy. Reproductive rights starts the minute the child is born. And since she hits puberty, what are we giving her in terms of her ability to negotiate sexually? Why are we still turning our faces around to gender-based violence that occurs through and throughout our homes and our societies? We constantly put women at the center of honor. Why? Why are our bodies linked to honor when honor comes from good homes, good values, societal and collective care? So for me, reproductive rights is not just a human right. It's the fundamental for gender equality. And if we are to meet these sustainable development goals that we have committed to, we can't do that by putting reproductive health as 3.1 or 3.3 just within the, as a checklist. It is integrated in every aspect of human life. So when we talk about education, where do we begin education and how do we integrate reproductive rights within education? We can think about best practices from across the world that look at menstrual information, awareness, and management as a key part for sexual negotiations later on in the world. That's how a woman can regain her control and be able to negotiate when and who and with and how she'd like to have sex. We can also then bring in the aspects of when she would like to practice safe sex. And that is also a critical importance. I think censorship is not the way to go anymore, right? Like, we need to be very clear that young people are having sex and they're having unsafe sex, and then they're resorting to other options as well. Yes, data is showing that married women are the ones in Pakistan that are generally going for abortions, but there are a large number of women that are using the emergency contraceptive pill as a key mechanism of avoiding pregnancy post-sexual encounters. But then there's also the aspect of where are we integrating this within gender-based violence policies, right? Right now, I think we're at a critical stage where we're seeing in Pakistan a huge rise actually in gender-based violence and instances, occurrence. Maybe it's reported more, we don't have enough data to justify either or, but the idea and the baseline is that we're seeing more and more reports of violence that is against women, whether in the and that is also a part of her reproductive rights and health. And then as we move forward, marriage, the nikah nama, all of those conditionalities on that piece of contract that we talk about are ways that women can ensure protection and safety for themselves. And last but not the least, I want to talk about the fact that when we talk about economic integration of women, we cannot do that without really critically analyzing the availability of care infrastructure. Because women, unfortunately, have to bear the burden of family raising, child raising, domestic responsibilities, taking care of their homes and working full-time. Full disclosure, I'm a full-time mom. I'm also a full-time working woman. I work on average 8 to 10 hours a day. I take care of my kids. And when I had my second child, I demanded a tubal ligation. I was 34 when I did that. And I could not have done that had I not had mentors like Tahira, like Yasmin, allies like Aisha, who constantly talk about the need for us to make our decisions. Women are infantilized when they go into these emergency rooms or when they go to these providers. So like Dr. Yasmin said, provider bias is real. And providers are the ones who are discouraging a lot of these management or fertility management techniques, where they're telling you, you're too young to make that decision, or you only have one child, why do you want to wait for the next one? Yeah. Who are these providers to make those decisions for us? And it's because of the narrative. It's because that women are seen as inferior. It's because that women are not seen as people who are able to make the decisions for themselves. It's not just about affordability, right? So we need to stop thinking that women don't know what they want, women don't know what they need, and women don't have the tools. We have all of that. We don't have the systems and the support to make it happen. When we talk about economics, what about sexual harassment at work? It is a very critical problem. Tahira ma'am has done a lot of work in this area where there are actual cases that have gone on for 4 or 5 years on sexual harassment. Why shouldn't women feel safe at work? And yet we don't. We don't have protections in place that allow for breastfeeding. When we talk about nutrition and breastfeeding, but we don't give space for women to breastfeed safely at work, what really are we constantly arguing about and going back and forth? So at the end of the day, I think I'd like to end with that without reproductive rights integrated across social, economic, education, health, development, and without appropriate budgets allocated by the health, by the population, women development, social development, disaster management authorities, even in terms of flooding, we had so many women pregnant in 2022 and even recently. None of the emergency cares had EMOC services properly integrated. We didn't have family planning services properly integrated. This was all reliant on CSOs and INGOs to deliver. So when we talk about accountability, I agree, community-led accountability needs to be there, but the systems also need to be accountable. They need to be financing this appropriately and proportionately against the policies that they themselves have committed to, whether it's the ICPD, the CDAW, the CSW. If you are not going to allocate appropriate human capital as well as financial capital and technological capital to ensure that women can get what they need, I don't think any of this is possible. So these conversations sometimes feel like cyclical, almost. But to me, like you said, integrated services, integrated across all levels of services, not just health. And then, of course, creating accountability for both the private sector and the public sector to ensure that spaces that are created for women are women-friendly, are appropriate, and take into consideration the lived realities of women. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madiha.